The squeaky wheel on the cleaning cart echoed through the empty concert hall. It was the only sound breaking the silence at 11 p.m. on a Thursday night. David pushed the cart slowly across the polished wooden stage, his shoulders tired from another long shift. This was his routine now. Every night, after most people had gone home to their families, he stayed behind to clean the Riverside Art Center. 3 years. That's how long he'd been doing this job. 3 years since everything changed. 3 years since his wife lost her battle with cancer and left him alone with their 7-year-old daughter, Lily. The night shift wasn't glamorous, but it paid $3 more per hour than the day shift. That extra money meant he could be home when Lily got off the school bus at 3:30. It meant he could help with homework, make dinner, and tuck her in at night. It meant he could still be the dad she needed, even though her mom was gone. David grabbed his spray bottle and cloth from the cart. Tonight was special. Well, special for everyone else. The annual charity gala was tomorrow evening. Rich people would fill these 300 seats wearing fancy clothes and writing big checks to help sick children. It was a good cause. David had no problem with that. But it also meant extra work for him. Everything had to be spotless. Every seat, every railing, every inch of this stage. He walked toward the grand piano that sat in the center of the stage. It was beautiful. A Steinway Model D concert grand, jet black and gleaming under the dim work lights. Even after all this time, his heart still skipped a beat when he got close to it. He ran the cloth gently across its smooth surface, wiping away invisible dust. His fingers brushed against the keys accidentally. The touch sent a shiver through him. It had been so long, so incredibly long since he'd really played. Not just fooling around, not just pressing a few keys while he cleaned, but really played. The way he used to. The way he'd dreamed of doing his whole life. 20 years ago, David had been someone different. He'd been a music student at the State University with big dreams. He was going to be a concert pianist. That was the plan. He'd practice 8 hours a day, his fingers flying across the keys, lost in the music. His professors said he had real talent, natural ability mixed with dedication. They said he could make it if he kept pushing, but then life happened. He met Jennifer at a coffee shop near campus. She was studying to be a nurse. They fell in love fast, got married even faster. Then Lily came along, and suddenly David had responsibilities that were bigger than his dreams. He took a job as a sales associate at an electronics store. The piano playing became a hobby. Then it became something he did occasionally. Then it became a memory. When Jennifer got sick, everything fell apart. The medical bills piled up like snow in a blizzard. Insurance covered some of it, but not nearly enough. There were experimental treatments, special medications, trips to specialists in other cities. David worked 2 jobs, then 3. He sold everything they didn't absolutely need, including his piano, the upright that his parents had given him for his 16th birthday, the one he'd played until his fingers were sore and his back ached. He sold it for $800 to help pay for Jennifer's care. It wasn't enough. Nothing was enough. She died on a Tuesday morning in March, holding his hand, making him promise to take care of their little girl. He promised. Of course he promised. What else could he do? After the funeral, David had to figure out how to survive. The debt was crushing. He was behind on rent, behind on everything. A friend told him about the custodian job at the arts center. It wasn't what he'd imagined doing with his life, but it was honest work. It paid the bills. Slowly, month by month, he climbed out of the hole. Not all the way out, but enough to breathe. Enough to give Lily a stable home. Lily didn't know about any of it. She didn't know her dad had once dreamed of performing on stages like this one. She'd never heard him play, except for a few notes here and there on toy keyboards at the store. There was no piano at home anymore. Nothing to show her that part of his life. Maybe that was for the best. Why tell her about dreams that died? Why make her feel bad about something that wasn't her fault? She was the best thing in his life. He didn't want her carrying any guilt. David continued cleaning the piano, lost in thought. He'd watched the rehearsals all week. Professional musicians coming into practice for tomorrow's gala. A cellist, a violinist, a soprano who could hit notes that seemed impossible, and pianists, several pianists, each one sitting at this exact bench playing pieces that David knew by heart. Pieces he'd learned years ago. Pieces that still lived somewhere in his fingers even if he never let them out anymore. One piece especially got to him. Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. One of the pianists had practiced it over and over on Tuesday night. David had been cleaning the orchestra pit listening. Every note was familiar. He could see the sheet music in his mind. He could feel where his fingers would go. It was muscle memory that never quite died, no matter how many years passed. No matter how many mops he pushed or toilets he scrubbed. Sometimes late at night after he'd finished cleaning, David would sit at the piano for just a minute. Never long enough that anyone would notice. Just long enough to play a few bars of something. Bach, Mozart, Chopin. His fingers were rougher now. Calloused from cleaning products and hard work, they didn't move as smoothly as they once had. But the music was still in there somewhere, buried under years of life and loss and doing what needed to be done. He glanced at his watch. 11:47 p.m., still lots to do. The seats needed checking. The lobby needed mopping. The bathrooms needed restocking. He couldn't stand here daydreaming about the past. That didn't pay the bills. That didn't put food on the table for Lily. David gave the piano one final wipe and started to turn away. But he paused, just for a second. His hand hovered over the keys. Maybe just one chord. One single chord before getting back to work. What would it hurt? He pressed down gently. The sound filled the empty hall, rich and pure. It hung in the air for a moment, then faded to nothing. David smiled sadly and returned to his cart. Tomorrow night, the stage would be full of music and applause. Important people would gather to celebrate art and charity. The piano would sing under the fingers of trained professionals. And David would be somewhere in the background, emptying trash cans and wiping down railings, invisible to everyone who mattered. He didn't know that in less than 24 hours, everything would change. He had no idea that tomorrow night he'd be the one sitting at that piano. He couldn't imagine that his fingers would once again make music that mattered. That hundreds of people would hear his story without him saying a single word. Right now, he was just a tired single dad trying to make it through another shift. Just a man who'd given up his dreams so his daughter could have a future. Just a custodian cleaning a stage, completely unaware that sometimes life gives you one more chance when you least expect it. The next evening came faster than David expected. He'd spent the day with Lily, making her favorite pancakes for breakfast and helping her finish a school project about butterflies. She'd glued colorful paper wings onto poster board while he cut out letters for the title, normal dad stuff. The kind of stuff that mattered more than anything else in the world. His sister picked Lily up at 5 p.m. David had to be at work by 6 for the gala setup. Uncle Duties, his sister joked, ruffling Lily's hair. We're getting ice cream and watching that new cartoon movie. Don't worry about rushing home. David hugged his daughter tight, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. These moments kept him going. Every late night, every tired morning, all of it was for her. The arts center was buzzing when David arrived. Catering trucks lined the back entrance. Florists carried in massive arrangements. Staff members rushed around with clipboards and headsets, their voices tense with pre-event stress. David slipped in through the employee entrance, changed into his uniform, and got to work. His job tonight was different from usual. He'd be on standby, cleaning up spills, emptying trash, staying invisible while rich people celebrated. By 7 p.m., the guests started arriving. David watched from behind a curtain backstage. Designer dresses, tailored suits, jewelry that probably cost more than his yearly salary. They laughed and air-kissed and sipped champagne from crystal glasses. This wasn't his world. It had never been his world, even back when he dreamed of performing. Musicians came from different backgrounds. Some had money, many didn't. But tonight this crowd wasn't here for the music. Not really. They were here to be seen, to network, to write tax-deductible checks and feel good about themselves. David didn't judge them. Not really. Their money helped sick kids. That was what mattered. He just felt invisible. Like furniture. Like part of the building itself. Has anyone seen Robert? A woman's voice cut through the backstage chaos. She sounded panicked. David recognized her. Ms. Chen, the event director. She'd worked at the Arts Center for 15 years. Usually calm and collected. Tonight she looked like she might cry. He's not answering his phone, someone responded. I've called 6 times. What about the backup? The college student who filled in last year? She's in Europe. Study abroad program. I already checked. David didn't know what they were talking about. He continued straightening chairs in the wing, trying to stay out of the way. But their panic was growing. More people gathered around Ms. Chen. Words like disaster and cancellation floated through the air. "We can't start without an opening act," Ms. Chen said, her voice tight. People paid $200 per ticket. They expect a full program. That's when David understood. The opening pianist. Something had gone wrong. He felt a flutter of sympathy. Some poor musician was probably sick or stuck in traffic. These things happened. They'd figure something out. They always did. What about the recorded track idea? Someone suggested. "Absolutely not," Ms. Chen snapped. "This is a live performance event. We can't play someone's Spotify playlist. These people want authentic performances." David moved to another section of the backstage area, organizing programs that had been left scattered on a table. He tried to focus on his work. This wasn't his problem. He was just the custodian, but he couldn't help listening. The desperation in their voices reminded him of his own desperate moments. When Jennifer was sick. When bills were overdue. When he didn't know how he'd make it to the next day. "Excuse me." Ms. Chen's voice was suddenly right behind him. David turned, startled. She was looking directly at him. Her eyes were red-rimmed like she'd been fighting back tears. "You're David, right? You work nights here?" "Yes, ma'am." He straightened up, holding a stack of programs awkwardly. "I've seen you near the piano sometimes, late at night, after your shift." She paused, studying his face. "Can you play?" The question hit him like cold water. His mouth went dry. What?" "The piano." "Can you play it?" Her words came faster now. "Our opening pianist has food poisoning. He called from the emergency room 20 minutes ago. We have no one. 300 people are sitting in that auditorium right now expecting a concert. I've heard you humming Chopin while you work. I've seen you touch the keys. Please tell me you can play." David's heart hammered in his chest. This couldn't be happening. "Miss Chen, I used to play. A long time ago. But I'm not a performer. I work here. I clean. I know what you do." Her voice softened slightly. "And I'm asking anyway. We need someone for one piece. Just one, 5 minutes. That's all. The rest of the program can adjust. But we need an opening, please." David looked past her at the stage. The piano sat there under the lights, waiting. How many times had he imagined sitting there again? How many late nights had he dreamed of one more chance? But those were fantasies. Dreams didn't match reality. His hands weren't the same. His confidence was gone. He couldn't possibly walk out there in front of hundreds of people. "I'm not dressed for this," he said weakly. It was a stupid excuse. He knew it the moment the words left his mouth. Ms. Chen glanced at his Navy custodian uniform, his name tag, his worn work shoes. "You're dressed like someone honest. Someone who works hard. That's more authentic than any tuxedo." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "David, I'm begging you. These people donated money to help children with cancer. Sick kids who are fighting for their lives. We can't let them down. And honestly, I think you need this too. I've watched you look at that piano for 3 years. Like it's something you lost. Maybe it's time you found it again." The words hit deeper than she probably intended. Something you lost. That described so much more than just music. Jennifer, his dreams, the person he used to be before life beat him down. But finding it again? That seemed impossible. You couldn't go backward. You couldn't undo years of grief and struggle in survival mode. "I haven't performed in 20 years, David said quietly. "My fingers aren't the same. I make mistakes now. I'm not good enough for this." "Good enough?" Ms. Chen laughed, but it wasn't mean. "David, half the people out there can't tell Chopin from Mozart. They're here for charity and free wine. You could play Happy Birthday and they'd applaud. But I don't think you'll play Happy Birthday. I think you'll play something beautiful because that's who you are. I can see it." David's hands trembled. He thought about Lily, safe at his sister's house eating ice cream and watching cartoons. She didn't know her dad had once been someone different, someone who made music instead of mopping floors. What would she think if she knew? Would she be proud? Or would she wonder why he gave it all up? "One piece," Ms. Chen pressed. "Chopin's Nocturne. The one you hum every Tuesday night. I've heard you. You know it by heart." He did know it. Every note. Every pause. Every delicate phrase. It was burned into his memory from thousands of hours of practice in another lifetime. But knowing it and performing it were completely different things. What if I mess up? The question came out like a whisper. Then you mess up, Ms. Chen said simply. You're human. You're a father working night shifts to support his daughter. You're someone who gave up his dreams for love. That's your story. If you miss a note, it doesn't change any of that. But if you don't try, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what could have happened. David closed his eyes. He could hear the audience murmuring through the curtain. Hundreds of people waiting for something beautiful, waiting for art, waiting for a reason to feel moved by something real. He thought about all the times he'd stood in this exact spot, invisible, watching other people shine, other people take chances, other people live out loud while he stayed in the shadows. Maybe Ms. Chen was right. Maybe he did need this. Not for them, for himself. To prove that the person he used to be wasn't completely gone, that somewhere under the exhaustion and grief and survival, there was still a musician, still someone who could create beauty instead of just cleaning up after other people's celebrations. Okay, he heard himself say. I'll do it. Ms. Chen's face flooded with relief. She grabbed his hand. Thank you. Oh, thank you. You have no idea what this means. But David wasn't listening anymore. He was already walking toward the stage, his legs moving on autopilot. His mind raced. Could he really do this? In front of all those people? In his work uniform? With hands that hadn't played seriously in years? He was about to find out. Ms. Chen walked onto the stage first. The audience quieted down, conversations fading to whispers. David stood in the wings, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might break through his chest. He could see everything from here. The sea of faces, the expensive clothes, the chandeliers casting golden light across the hall. This was real. This was actually happening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ms. Chen's voice rang out clear and confident. Thank you all for being here tonight to support the Children's Cancer Foundation. Before we begin our scheduled program, I need to share something with you. David's palms were sweating. He wiped them on his uniform pants, but it didn't help. His mouth felt like cotton. 20 years. It had been 20 years since he'd performed in front of anyone. Back then, he'd been confident, prepared. He'd worn proper concert clothes and spent weeks rehearsing. Tonight, he had none of that. Just fear and a uniform with a name tag that said maintenance. Our opening performer tonight is unable to join us due to illness, Ms. Chen continued. However, we're fortunate to have someone else who will be playing for you. Please welcome David Thompson. The applause was polite, confused. David forced his legs to move, one step then another. The stage lights hit him like a wave of heat. He heard the whispers immediately, saw the puzzled looks. A woman in the third row leaned to her husband, not even bothering to lower her voice. Is that the janitor? Someone else pulled out their phone. Then another person. Within seconds, multiple phones were pointed at him. Not to record something beautiful. To record something weird, something to laugh about later. You won't believe what happened at the charity gala, they'd tell their friends. They had the cleaning guy play piano because the real musician didn't show up. David's face burned. Every instinct screamed at him to turn around, to run off this stage and hide in the supply closet until this nightmare ended. What was he thinking? He wasn't a performer anymore. He was nobody, just a broke single dad who scrubbed toilets for a living. But his feet kept moving. Muscle memory from a different life. He reached the piano bench and sat down slowly. The seat was exactly the right height, professional, perfect, everything he wasn't. The audience waited. Some looked curious. Most looked skeptical. A few looked annoyed, like their expensive evening was being ruined by some kind of joke. David's hands hovered over the keys. They were shaking. Actually shaking. Everyone could see it. He glanced down at his uniform, at the chemical stains on his sleeves from cleaning products, at his worn work boots that had no business being on this stage. He thought about Lily. What if someone recorded this and it went viral for all the wrong reasons? What if kids at her school saw it and made fun of her? Your dad's the janitor who thought he could be a pianist. His throat tightened. He couldn't breathe right. This was a mistake, a terrible mistake. Then something shifted in his mind. A memory. Jennifer, lying in the hospital bed 2 weeks before she died. She'd been so weak by then, could barely stay awake for more than an hour at a time, but that afternoon she'd grabbed his hand with surprising strength. Promise me something, she'd whispered. Anything. Don't disappear after I'm gone. Don't just survive. Don't just go through the motions for Lily's sake. Her eyes had filled with tears. I've watched you give up everything. The music, your dreams, all of it for us. And I love you for it. But David, please, don't forget who you are. Don't let that person die too, he'd promised. Of course he'd promised. He would have promised her anything in that moment. But he hadn't kept it. For 3 years, he'd done exactly what she'd asked him not to do. He'd disappeared, become a ghost of himself, going through motions, surviving but not living. David closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them again, something had changed. The audience was still there. The phones were still pointed at him. The whispers continued, but none of it mattered the same way anymore. He wasn't playing for them. He was playing for Jennifer, for the promise he'd made and broken, for Lily, who deserved a father who could show her that dreams don't have to die just because life gets hard, for himself, for the person he used to be and maybe, just maybe, could be again. His fingers found their position on the keys, the opening notes of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. He'd played this piece 1,000 times, 10,000 times, in recitals, in competitions, in his tiny college apartment at 2 a.m. when he couldn't sleep because the music was bursting to get out. The first note came out soft, tentative. His finger slipped slightly, not quite the clean start he'd wanted. Someone in the audience coughed. Another person shifted in their seat, the sound loud in the quiet hall. But David didn't stop. He pressed on to the second phrase, then the third, and slowly something miraculous began to happen. His hands remembered, not just the notes, not just the technical parts. They remembered the feeling, the emotion, the reason this piece had meant something to him 20 years ago. The melody flowed out, delicate and haunting. Each note was like a memory coming back to life. He played through the first section, his confidence growing with every measure. The shakiness in his hands faded. The fear in his chest eased. This was right. This was where he belonged. Not cleaning, not hiding, but here, making music, creating something beautiful out of the darkness. The audience had gone completely silent now. No more whispers, no more shifting. Even the phones had stopped moving, held steady by hands that had forgotten they were recording. People were actually listening. David let himself sink deeper into the music. The Nocturne was about night, about darkness, but also about beauty that exists in that darkness, about finding light in unexpected places. He thought about every night shift he'd worked, every time he'd pushed that squeaky cleaning cart across this stage, every moment he'd felt invisible and forgotten. All of it poured into the music. His fingers moved across the keys with increasing confidence. The middle section came, more complex, more demanding. His hand stretched for intervals he hadn't played in years. One chord came out slightly messy. He heard it. The audience probably heard it too. But he didn't stop. Didn't apologize. Just kept going because that's what performers do. That's what life required. You mess up and you keep going. Tears started forming in his eyes. He didn't try to stop them. Couldn't stop them even if he wanted to. This wasn't just about playing piano anymore. It was about every sacrifice he'd made, every dream he'd buried, every time he'd looked at this piano and felt something die inside him, because he'd convinced himself that part of his life was over. Jennifer's face filled his mind. Her smile, the way she'd looked at him when he played for her in their early days together. Before the sickness, before the bills. When they'd been young and stupid and thought love could conquer anything. It couldn't conquer cancer, couldn't conquer death. But maybe it could conquer this, the forgetting, the disappearing, the slow death of giving up on yourself. The music swelled, the Nocturne's most beautiful section, the part that always made him cry even when he was just listening. Now playing it, the emotion was overwhelming. His shoulders shook. Tears rolled down his cheeks and dripped onto the keys. He didn't care. Let them see. Let them see what real music looked like. Not perfection. Not a polished performance by someone in a tuxedo, but truth, raw and messy and human. In the audience, something was happening. The skeptical faces had changed. A woman in the front row had tears streaming down her face. A businessman who'd been checking his phone earlier sat with his mouth slightly open, completely still. A teenager who'd been dragged here by her parents leaned forward in her seat, her eyes wide. They weren't seeing a janitor anymore. They were seeing a person, a father, A man who'd lost everything and kept going. A musician who'd buried his talent for 20 years but hadn't killed it. Couldn't kill it. Because real music doesn't die, it just waits. David played the final phrases. Soft, gentle, like a lullaby, like saying goodnight to someone you love. The last note hung in the air, pure and clear and impossibly beautiful. Then silence. The silence lasted forever, or maybe it was only 3 seconds. David couldn't tell. Time felt strange. Frozen. He sat at the piano with his hands still resting on the keys, his face wet with tears, his heart hammering. The last note had faded away, but he could still feel it vibrating through his bones. Then it started. One person stood up. David couldn't see who through his blurry eyes. But he heard the chair creak, heard footsteps as the person rose. Then another stood, and another. Within seconds, the entire audience was on their feet, all 300 of them, standing and applauding like their hands were on fire. The sound hit David like a physical force. It wasn't polite charity applause. It wasn't the kind of clapping people do because they're supposed to. This was real, loud, almost desperate. People weren't just clapping. They were shouting. "Bravo!" someone yelled. Others joined in. The applause got louder, wilder. Some people had tears on their faces too. A man in the 5th row wasn't even trying to hide that he was crying. David stood up slowly, his legs shaky. He didn't know what to do with his hands. Should he bow? Wave? He felt exposed. Vulnerable. Like he'd just shown these strangers every broken piece of his soul and now they were applauding it. Part of him wanted to run off the stage, but his feet wouldn't move. Ms. Chen rushed out from the wings. Her mascara was smudged. She'd been crying too. She grabbed David's hand and raised it like he'd won a boxing match. The audience applauded even harder. Phones were still out. But now they were recording something different. Not a joke, not a weird moment to laugh about later, but something real. Something that mattered. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ms. Chen's voice cracked with emotion. "David Thompson." She had to pause because her voice broke. "David works here. He's been on our custodial staff for 3 years. But before that, before life took him in a different direction, he was a musician. What you just witnessed was pure courage, pure heart." "Thank you, David," the applause continued. David managed a small wave, feeling completely overwhelmed. He walked off stage on trembling legs, his mind spinning. What had just happened? Had that really just happened? It felt like a dream. Like any second he'd wake up back in his small apartment, alarm clock beeping, another night shift ahead. But it was real. The backstage crew surrounded him immediately. People he'd worked with for 3 years but barely spoken to. They were hugging him, shaking his hand, telling him it was beautiful, amazing. One of the lighting technicians, a guy named Frank who usually just grunted hello, had tears in his eyes. "Man, that was something else," he said, gripping David's shoulder. The rest of the gala continued, but David couldn't focus. He was supposed to be working, cleaning up spills, emptying trash, but people kept stopping him. Audience members who'd left their seats during intermission to find him. A woman in a silver dress grabbed both his hands. "My husband died last year," she said. "Cancer. I haven't cried about it yet. Not really. But your music. It broke something open. Thank you." David didn't know what to say. He just nodded, his own eyes filling up again. A man in an expensive suit approached. He handed David a business card. "I run a music school downtown. We need teachers. Real teachers who understand what music means. Call me Monday." David took the card with numb fingers, staring at it like it was written in a foreign language. More people came. More stories. More cards. More offers. It was overwhelming, beautiful and terrifying at the same time. By the time the event ended at 11 p.m., David's pockets were full of business cards and his head was spinning with possibilities he'd never imagined. Ms. Chen found him as he was finally starting his actual cleaning duties. "Go home," she said gently. "I mean it. Tonight you were a performer, not a custodian. The cleaning can wait. Go home to your daughter." David wanted to argue. He needed the hours. Needed the pay. But Miss Chen's expression left no room for debate. "We'll talk Monday," she added. "About your future here. About what this means. Just go. Be with your family." He changed out of his uniform in the employee locker room, his hand still shaking slightly. When he pulled out his phone, he saw 47 missed notifications. Text messages. Social media alerts. His sister had sent him a dozen messages, each more excited than the last. People had posted videos. The performance was already online, already spreading. David watched one of the videos as he walked to his car. Seeing himself on that stage was surreal. The camera had caught everything. His tears, his trembling hands at the start. The moment the fear transformed into something else. The comments were pouring in. Thousands of them already. This made me cry so hard. Real talent doesn't need a tuxedo. Who's cutting onions in here? This is what music is supposed to be. One comment stood out. My dad gave up his dreams to raise me after my mom died. I never knew what he sacrificed until now, calling him tonight. David had to pull over. He sat in his car in the parking lot and cried. Not sad tears. Not happy tears either. Something in between. Relief, maybe. Or release. His phone rang. His sister. He answered. David, oh my God, have you seen? It's everywhere. My friend in California just sent me the video. California. People across the country are watching you. Her voice was high with excitement. Lily's still up. She made me keep her awake. She's been refreshing YouTube every 5 minutes. She knows. She saw the video. She wants to talk to you. David's heart clenched. Lily knew. She'd seen him cry on stage in his work uniform. What must she think? Daddy? Her small voice came through the phone. She sounded tired but excited. Daddy, you play piano? Like really, really good piano? I used to, sweetie. A long time ago. Why didn't you tell me? There was no accusation in her voice. Just curiosity. Innocence. David struggled to find words. How do you explain sacrifice to a 7-year-old? How do you tell her that you sold your dreams so she could eat? That you gave up who you were so she could have who she needed? It's complicated, baby. The people in the comments say you're amazing. They say you're brave. She paused. Are you famous now? David laughed, wiping his eyes. No, sweetie. I'm not famous. I'm just me. Can you teach me? Her voice got smaller, hopeful. Can you teach me to play like that? Something broke open in David's chest, a door he'd kept locked for years. Yeah, he said, his voice thick. Yeah, I can teach you. We don't have a piano. We'll figure it out. They talked for a few more minutes before his sister took the phone back. She's so proud of you, she said quietly. You know that, right? And so am I. What you did tonight. That took guts. After they hung up, David sat in his car for a long time. The parking lot was empty now. The arts center dark except for the security lights. He thought about walking back inside, about sitting at that piano one more time. But he was exhausted, emotionally drained. He needed to get home. He drove through the quiet streets, his mind racing. Everything felt different now. The same streets. The same car. The same life. But different somehow. Like a door had opened and he couldn't close it even if he wanted to. When he got home, he stood outside Lily's bedroom. His sister had brought her back and put her to bed. She was asleep, curled up with her stuffed rabbit. David watched her breathe, his heart full of love so intense it hurt. I'm trying, Jennifer, he whispered into the darkness. I'm trying to not disappear. I don't know what happens next, but I'm trying. He went to his own room and lay down, but sleep wouldn't come. His mind kept replaying the night. The fear, the music, the applause, the way people had looked at him. Really looked at him. Not through him like he was invisible, but at him, seeing him. His phone kept buzzing with notifications. The video was spreading faster than he could track. 10,000 views, 20,000, 50,000. Comments in different languages. Shares from people he'd never met. The internet was a strange place. You could spend years invisible and then suddenly in one night, the world knew your name. But the views and comments didn't matter as much as one thing. The business card in his pocket from the music school owner. The possibility it represented. Not fame, not viral attention, but a chance to do what he loved. A chance to teach Lily, to show her that dreams don't have to die. They can hibernate. They can wait. And sometimes when you least expect it, they wake up. David finally fell asleep around 3 a.m., his phone still buzzing on the nightstand. The world discovering him while he dreamed of music and second chances and a little girl learning to play piano. Monday morning came with unexpected noise. David's phone started ringing at 7 a.m., then again at 7:15. By 8 o'clock, he'd received calls from 3 local news stations, 2 radio shows, and someone claiming to be from a national morning talk show. He ignored most of them. This wasn't what he wanted. He didn't do it for attention, but he did call the music school, the one whose owner had handed him a card Friday night. A woman answered on the second ring. Riverside Music Academy. Hi, this is David Thompson. Mr. Patterson gave me his card and said to call about teaching positions. His voice came out uncertain. Scared almost. Oh, David. Yes, hold on. There was shuffling, muffled voices. Then a man's voice came on. David, Greg Patterson here. I'm so glad you called.
Can you come in today?
I know it's short notice, but I'd love to discuss this in person. They met at 2 p.m. The school was in a renovated warehouse downtown, full of light and sound. Piano music drifted from one room, a violin from another. Kids ranging from tiny to teenage moved through hallways with instrument cases. It smelled like rosin and old wood and possibility. Greg was maybe 60 with gray hair and kind eyes. He led David to his office and gestured to a chair. I'll be direct, he said. We need someone who can teach piano to kids who can't afford the fancy schools. Kids from rough neighborhoods. Kids who've been through things. He leaned forward. I watched that video 20 times. You weren't just playing notes. You were sharing your story. That's what these kids need. Someone who's been through the fire and came out the other side. David's throat felt tight. I haven't taught before. Not formally. You raised a daughter alone while working night shifts. You survived loss. You kept going when it would have been easier to give up. Greg smiled. That's the most important curriculum. The piano stuff? You clearly know that. But teaching kids isn't really about perfect technique. It's about showing them that music can save your life, that it matters. You already know that. You lived it. They talked for an hour. Greg offered him a position. 3 days a week to start, teaching beginners and intermediate students. The pay wasn't amazing, but it was more than the custodian job. And it was day shifts. He'd be home for dinner, home to put Lily to bed every night. There's one condition, Greg added. We do a recital every 3 months. All students perform. Teachers, too. I'd want you to play. Show these kids what's possible. David's hands went cold. Perform regularly. You don't have to decide now. Think about it. Greg stood, extending his hand. But David, what you did Friday night, that wasn't a one-time thing. That was you remembering who you are. Don't forget again. David left the music school in a daze. He picked Lily up from school at 3:30 like always. She ran to the car, backpack bouncing, face bright with excitement. Madison saw the video. And Tyler! And Mrs. Henderson showed it to our whole class. She what? David's stomach dropped. For music appreciation, Lily climbed into her booster seat. She said you were an example of pursuing your passion. What's pursuing mean? It means chasing something. Going after it. Are you going to chase piano now? Like for real? David looked at his daughter in the rearview mirror. Her eyes were so full of hope. So bright with possibility. Yes, sweetie. I think I am. Good, she smiled. Because I want to learn. And you should teach me. Madison says her piano teacher is boring. You won't be boring. That evening, David got another unexpected call. Ms. Chen from the Art Center. I have news, she said. The board met today. Emergency meeting. They want to create a new position. Artist in residence. You'd work with community outreach programs. Bring music to schools that can't afford it. And you'd perform at our events. Real performances. Not just filling in. David sat down hard on his couch. Ms. Chen, I appreciate this, but I already accepted a teaching position at Riverside Music Academy. I know. Greg called me. We want to work together. You'd teach there 3 days a week. Work with us 2 days. It's all been arranged. If you want it. She paused. David, what happened Friday night changed things. Donations tripled. People are calling asking about music education programs. They want to help. But they want you involved. They connected with your story. I don't want to be famous, David said quietly. I just want to play music and take care of my daughter. I know. That's exactly why this matters. You're not doing this for attention. You're doing it because music is part of who you are. Let us help you share that. Over the next week, things moved fast. Too fast sometimes. David gave his notice at the custodian job. His boss was understanding. I watched the video, he said. You were too good for this work anyway. Go teach some kids. Make some music, a local piano company called. They'd seen the video. Wanted to donate an upright piano to David's home. For you and your daughter, the owner said. No strings attached. We just believe in what you represent. The piano arrived on a Saturday. Lily watched the delivery guys maneuver it through the door with wide eyes. "It's really ours?" she whispered. "It's really ours." That afternoon, David sat at the piano with Lily on his lap. He showed her middle C, showed her how to curve her fingers, how to press the keys gently. She played her first note, then another. Her face lit up with wonder. "It's magic," she said. "It's better than magic. It's real." David's first official day teaching was the following Monday. He had 6 students, a 10-year-old boy who lived in a homeless shelter, twin girls whose parents worked 3 jobs between them, a teenager who'd been in foster care, a kid with anxiety so bad he could barely speak, and 2 others, each carrying their own invisible weights. He taught them scales, basic chords, but mostly he taught them that music was a place where you could be yourself, where your story mattered, where broken things could still make beautiful sounds. 3 months later, the recital came. David's students performed. Some played simple pieces, others stumbled through their songs, but every single one of them finished. Every single one of them stood and bowed while their families clapped. Some of those families had never been to anything like this before, had never seen their kids do something this brave. Then it was David's turn. He'd been dreading it, anticipating it, both at the same time. He walked to the piano in the small auditorium. No fancy concert hall this time. No viral video waiting to happen. Just students and parents and a few community members. Lily sat in the front row next to his sister. She wore her favorite dress, the blue one with flowers. She'd insisted on dressing up for Daddy's performance. David played Chopin again, the same nocturne. But it felt different this time. Not like proving something, not like reclaiming something lost, just like sharing something true. The music flowed out familiar and comfortable, like greeting an old friend. When he finished, the applause was warm, genuine. Lily jumped up, clapping harder than anyone, her face glowing with pride. "That's my daddy," she announced to anyone listening. "He's teaching me too." After the recital, Greg pulled David aside. "You found it," he said simply. "Found what?" "What you were looking for, balance, purpose, yourself." Greg smiled. "You're not the guy who gave everything up anymore. You're not the guy desperately holding on. You're just a musician who happens to be a great dad, or a great dad who happens to be a musician. Same thing, really." That night, after Lily was asleep, David sat at their piano, the donated upright that lived in their small living room now. He ran his fingers over the keys softly, not pressing hard enough to make sound, just touching them, remembering. He thought about the last 3 months, the video that changed everything, the doors that opened, the life that emerged from what he thought was just survival. It still felt surreal sometimes. Like any moment he'd wake up and be back pushing that cleaning cart, watching other people live their dreams. But this was real. The piano was real. His students were real. Lily learning to play was real. He hadn't become famous, hadn't made it big. The video had its moment and then faded like they all do. But the doors it opened stayed open. The chances it created remained. David played a few soft chords. Nothing fancy, just sound filling the quiet apartment, music that existed just because he wanted to make it. Not for an audience, not for views or likes, just for himself. For the pure joy of it. He thought about Jennifer, wondered what she'd think of all this. Probably she'd cry, then laugh, then tell him she knew all along he couldn't stay disappeared forever. That real things don't stay buried. They find their way back to the surface eventually. "I kept my promise," he whispered to the empty room. "I didn't disappear. Not completely. Not forever." From Lily's room came a small sound. David walked quietly to her door and peeked in. She was asleep but smiling slightly, her hands positioned like they were resting on piano keys. Even in dreams, she was practicing. David smiled. This was it. This was the life he'd found on the other side of that terrifying moment on stage. Not perfect, not easy. Still full of challenges and bills and single-parent stress, but also full of music. Full of purpose. Full of second chances and new beginnings and the simple truth that it's never too late to remember who you are. He went back to the piano and played a lullaby, soft and gentle, a promise to himself, to Jennifer's memory, to Lily's future, to every person who'd ever given up their dreams and wondered if they could find them again. The answer, David had learned, was yes. Not the same way, Not exactly as planned, but somehow better, deeper, more real, because dreams that survive the fire come back stronger. They come back with wisdom earned through sacrifice. They come back knowing what really matters. And sometimes, just sometimes, they come back on a Friday night when you're just cleaning a stage, seconds before everything changes forever.